Welcome back. Here's part of President Obama's interview this coming Sunday on NBC's Meet the Press. Let's listen.
This healthcare debate, as you well know, can sometimes be about bigger things. And among your harshest critics is the view somehow that government is out of control. And in some cases, it's gotten very personal. Right. Your election to a lot of people was supposed to mark America somehow moving beyond race. Right. And yet this week you had former President Jimmy Carter saying most, not just a little, but most of this Republican opposition against you is motivated by racism. Do you agree with that?
No. Look, I said during the campaign, are there some people who still think through the prism of race when it comes to evaluating me and my candidacy? Absolutely. Sometimes they vote for me for that reason. Sometimes they vote against me for that reason. I'm sure that was true during the campaign. I'm sure that's true now. But I think you actually put your finger on what this argument's really about. And it's an argument that's gone on for the history of this republic. And that is, what's the right role of government? How do we balance freedom with our need to look after one another? I talked about this in the joint session speech. This is not a new argument, and it always invokes passions.
With us now is the moderator of Meet the Press, David Gregory, who asked that great question, and Ron Brownstein is the political director for Atlantic Media. David, the one thing I like about this president, when you get to sit down with him like you've had the benefit of doing, is the way he thinks out loud and understands that great American tension, which is the very essence of our country. How much freedom do we have? How much equality do we have? How much taking care of each other versus how much do we leave each other alone? It is the great American tension. I thought he got to it.
Absolutely. And, Chris, something that you and I have talked about off the air is this question of the role of government. I mean, that's the big challenge right now. Is this president effectively selling to the American people the proposition that government is the solution to some of these huge challenges? And I thought it was very interesting that a lot of what is lined up against him by way of opposition is not something that he thinks is motivated by race. Again, he makes the concession there that some of it may be, but both from the president's remarks, you can get it, and talking to people behind the scenes, they do not want to turn this into a conversation about race. They don't think there's anything to be gained from it right now. They don't think there's any minds to be changed on this particular topic right now.
It seems to me, Ron, that at this time in our history, with high unemployment growing and growing and growing all through this season, with real problems with the government, that if he does get a national health care plan through right now, it would be seen as historically odd. How do they do it in that season of high recession, of concerns about the economy, concerns about the government, and the people agree to some massive new federal program?
First of all, it's no fun being on the show at the same time with someone who can start a sentence, as the president said to me today. I feel like a certain advantage today.
And by the way, as he said, only he knows what he said.
I'm going to soldier through. Well, look, I mean, that is the fundamental challenge. You know, when they came in, their bet was that they had defeated, in effect, not only John McCain, but Ronald Reagan. I mean, David Axelrod argued very explicitly when they came in that they believed that when Bill Clinton was president, he was still operating in the shadow of Reagan. People were resistant to the idea of government. They believed that the collapse of 2008 and the dissatisfaction with Bush had really discredited the conservative notion that government is not the solution, government is the problem, and they had more opportunity than Clinton did to try to reach beyond that and expand government's role in our economy. And they have done so aggressively on a variety of fronts: the stimulus plan, cap and trade, and now health care. And they are facing that backlash. I mean, that is the core. I believe there is a cultural element behind some of the opposition to Obama that is rooted in a sense that America is changing in ways that some of those voters don't like. But it is fundamentally an ideological argument. He's right. And health care is just one component of that. Well, the answer is, if you get there, you know, the tailwind they believe they have, is this great deal of dissatisfaction over the way the economy has worked, and the Rahm Emanuel argument that a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. The other thing, though, they have done that is different than in the past is they've been able to peel off a lot of the key constituency groups to support them, but they are facing this grassroots opposition, and it is more ideological than anything else about the role of government.
David, it's so amazing because you talked to the president who just made the case for government. It was Bill Clinton, a Democrat, the last Democratic president, who said the era of big government is over after getting whacked in that '94 election. Do you think he can make this case based on his persuasive powers with you today? Could he make the case for more government?
Well, I don't know that he's there yet, honestly. I don't know that he's there, because in the health care debate, he has got to fight his own party on this. Those members of Congress now, particularly in the Senate, but in the House as well, who were recruited to run and to retake the majority back in 2006, when they could make a case in their conservatives' districts that government wasn't working, that it wasn't competent after Katrina, that it wasn't competent under the Bush administration because of the Iraq War. Those very members and senators are saying, hang on. We don't trust that government's going to be able to administer a program like this. So I think there's a ways to go.
And those purple state and blue state, red state rather, Democrats have it tough getting reelected. We'll be right back with David Gregory, fresh from his interview with President Obama. We're back with David Gregory and Ron Brownstein with the Politics Fix. Let's take a look at Joe Wilson. Here he is, Joe Wilson, saying, well, today, when asked what he said when he's asked about the attention he's gotten from his "you lie" outburst against the president.
Absolutely not. It was speaking the wrong place, wrong time. And now I'm the #1 target of Washington Democrats, #1 target of Move On, #1 target of Acorn. Hey, I trust my constituents. I've never taken them for granted, and I'll work hard to justify their vote next year.
David, did this come up in your interview? You're laughing. Did this come up? Because he obviously wants to keep the fight going, obviously. That apology was a little weak, but...
By way of passive-aggressive, that gets up there that's pretty high. Like, I'm sorry, and now all these people are after me, and isn't that actually a great thing? That's what sort of struck me about that. I think what's interesting about the interview is the way the president talks about how he sees, how he assesses the opposition against him. On the question of race, on the question of whether violence is possible, as the House Speaker talked about. And again, the president's talking about civility, trying to keep some of the attention away from the hyperbole. As he said, that's what gets all the attention. He is still trying to regain control of the overall message. If he can increase support for health care, he can, drown all that out and try to get the votes he needs.
A lot of this anti-Obama stuff is just good old Western Prairie, your sagebrush rebellion you're reporting.
Right. One of the big stories of the last two cycles is the Democratic gains in places that traditionally lean to the right of center. I have a piece in the National Journal today looking at the Mountain West, where Democrats have made enormous gains in the last 3 cycles in the House, the Senate, and governorships. But, Chris, all of that against the backdrop of playing off a conservative Republican president made it very easy for Democrats to portray themselves as moderates. The challenge we're seeing now is the ability of Democrats to hold those centrist voters, not only in the Mountain West, but also the Outer South, against the backdrop of a left-of-center Democratic president pursuing a national Democratic agenda on cap and trade, on health care, on spending, and that is much more challenging. And if you look at places like the Mountain West, if you look at what's going on in Virginia, some of these other states, North Carolina, where they've made ground since 2004, holding it will be the challenge.
David, we'll all be watching your interview with the president this weekend on Media Press across the country. And Ron Brownstein, thank you, sir, for that latest on what's happening. Because obviously he's got problems in the West as well as the South.